Today we will cover The War of Art, written by best-selling author Steven Pressfield. The War of Art is comprised of 3 different books, which basically are separated sections within the book. Book 1 is called Resistance, Book 2 Turning Pro, and Book 3 Beyond Resistance. We'll start off with book number 1, Resistance. What is resistance? A good portion of this book is dedicated to this exact question. Pressfield gives resistance many titles, from insidious to implacable and from universal to internal. If I would attempt to describe my interpretation of resistance as I gathered it from this book, it would probably sound something like this. Resistance is the force that prevents us from doing that which we know we should. Resistance rationalizes and shows us why it's okay not to do it. Resistance is always present, and it is present in everyone. However, the degree of resistance and the way we react to it varies from person to person, and the more you give into the resistance, the more it grows. Fear is the main fuel source for resistance, whether it is fear of failure, fear of success, fear of pain, or fear of anything else. Anything that you fear might happen is another drop in the fuel tank of resistance. We've all been there. It's Friday afternoon and you've just finished work, but you still have a leftover assignment that you need to finish. But you decide to take a little break and have a beer first. That 1 beer becomes 2, and that becomes 3. And by the time you wake up the next morning, you realize you haven't done a single thing and need to rearrange your entire schedule to finish your assignment. Resistance just beat you. The most common manifestation of resistance is procrastination. The inability to act, or the choice to act on something with a lower priority over what really needs to be done. Basically, it's choosing short-term pleasure and long-term pain over long-term pain and short-term pleasure. Lucky for us, resistance can be beaten. Enter book 2, Turning Pro. In the second book, Pressfield talks about how to overcome resistance and reach your goals. To defeat resistance, you have to think and act like a pro. Defeating resistance is as simple as sitting down and putting in the work. It's simple, but not easy. It's mentioned in the book that all of us are already pros in one area of our lives, our jobs. So what exactly is the attitude we bring to our jobs, and what would happen if we would apply this attitude to our personal pursuits? According to the book, these are the attitudes that we have, or at least should have, towards our work. The first one is that we show up every day. We also show up no matter what. We stay on the job all day and put in our best effort. We have a long-term commitment to our jobs, and the stakes are high and very real. We accept payment for our labor, and we don't over-identify ourselves with our jobs. We master the technique of our jobs, we have a sense of humor about our jobs, and we receive praise and blame in the real world. Now ask yourself the question, if I would bring this kind of work ethic to one of my personal projects, what would my progress look like, and where would I be 1 year from now? The thing that pros do above all is honing their craft. A professional realizes that having a robust skill set is an absolute essential to perform at the highest level. It's just like Abraham Lincoln said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 hours sharpening my axe." Which brings us to book number 3, Beyond Resistance. Book 3 gets a lot more abstract. In here, Pressfield talks about the force that is outside our control but is the source of all our ideas. Whether you call it a muse, a god, or the universe, it's the origin of all our ideas. It's the plane that generates a thought before we think it. This is also the reason why we prepare our toolkit, so that the moment we get the message, we can execute. Pressfield also talks about how the muse can be found in the self, whereas resistance is found in the ego. This would mean that the bigger your ego is, the more you're actively sabotaging your own progress. If all of this sounds a little woo-woo, I'd highly encourage you to read the whole thing, as everything makes a lot more sense when you get to the bottom of it. For me personally, this was one of the most profound chapters I've ever read. So this is my conclusion. In order to achieve your goals, you have to overcome resistance and prepare yourself for the moment when the magic strikes. Resistance is strong and it is found everywhere, but we all have the power to overcome resistance, and it's our own will that ultimately shapes our path, and resistance is our only enemy, now and always. I rate this book 4.5 out of 5 stars and highly recommend everyone to read it. It's a short book, but its rich content will leave you full for weeks. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to join the pack, don't forget to subscribe below, and I'll hope to see you soon.